Hi, I'm Nikki, the Obsessive Bookseller. Welcome to this episode of Read Reading to be Read for April 2024. I kind of like mashing up my wrap-ups and TBRs all into one video, and it also gives me the advantage of being able to publish it anytime in April as opposed to right at the beginning to let you know what I'm doing for the rest of the month. So that kind of flexibility has come in handy in the past because I am not the most consistent booktuber I've ever seen. I've got a lot of really exciting titles this month. I have honed in a system on focusing on the best books first. If you caught my Q2 TBR, I am continuing to stick to that pretty religiously, and I'm loving how much it's simplifying my life. That should be the theme of my entire world for this year, is simplifying. And although it was a little complex to set up initially, having something that I can follow without stress and making sure that I'm actually going to get all of my projects read on time, love it. And speaking of projects, I've actually read a few more than I'm presenting here, but you'll see more about them when those project videos air. I choose randomly, so I don't want the surprise ruined by sharing in the wrap-up what I already read for a video you haven't seen yet. So, in any case, not for a project, this month I read Grievar's Blood by Alexander Darwin. This is book 2 in the Combat Codes. This is a really snazzy, broken binding edition that I absolutely love. So I raved about the first book. I read it for Read Burn Horde, and one of my favorites of the year so far. It will go on a pedestal. It's everything I love about school settings, training sequences, fight scenes, like all of it. It basked in that. It was so good. This book had a lot of those same elements, but not to the same degree. It was not so much focused on the school setting. It was not so much focused on the training. But there were a lot of fight sequences, so at least it kept that aspect of what I loved about the first book. The first book I praised that the two POVs I felt so connected to. I love that it was narrowly focused. In this one, we expanded a little bit, so we added 2 additional POVs, and the main 2 from the first book didn't get a lot of screen time comparably. Like, enough to advance their plots, whatnot, but while I think it's valuable and I'm looking forward to seeing where their stories go in the next book, something about adding those 2 kind of lost the essence of what I loved about the first book. And not by much. We're talking, this book ended up being a 4-star read, a solid whereas the first one was on a pedestal at 5 stars. But you know, when I find something this good, I'm bound to nitpick anything that comes after. And this one also felt like a setup novel. I do like where it's going. There is a little bit more complexity in this one. You've got some really interesting character profiles. I'm not sure what the author is planning to do next, but I'm totally on board. The next one, very excited for, comes out sometime in December. I'm kind of hoping to maybe snag an early copy. We'll see how it goes. Next up, my patron Sonia and I read Shadow Saint by Gareth Hanrahan, book 2 in the Black Iron Legacy trilogy. This book and this series is wild. So many creative things going on. The world building, it just oozes off the page. It is so cool. I love the character profiles as well. They are really animated and they pop off the page, but yet they're not so far gone that they're like caricatures and stupid. And the first book focused on a set of characters and events, and this one focused on a different set of characters and events, and then kind of near the end they started to converge a bit. And I missed the first set of characters at the beginning. I was like, oh man, I'm not sure if I'm really in the mood to dive into something completely different. But now that we've reached the end and the next book promises to be a full-on convergence of both of those worlds, I am just so excited. The writing style is so unique, probably my favorite thing about it. Reading the book feels like an experience within itself. It's got a different presentation. Third-person present tense, I think, but don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've been in an English class. I really like that. Sometimes in this particular book, that creativity came at the sacrifice of clarity. So there's a few passages where I had to reread entire chapters because I got confused on what was going on. And both of us kind of had that issue where we were on the verge of being totally lost, but managed to save it somehow and clarify what was going on so we could keep reading. And normally I would be really complaining about a book that does that, but this one is so unique that it gets a pass because I'm enjoying it so much. We're going with a 4 out of 5 stars here. Let's talk about some currently reading titles. Like I said, I have more going right now than I'm showing because I'm reading them for projects, which that bothers me. I'm kind of a completionist and I want to show you everything that I've got going on. But yeah, I don't want to ruin the surprise. I need to figure out a better system. But I am still reading with my patron Katie, A Time of Courage by John Gwynne. This is one of those stories we are just basking in and taking our sweet time. And I'm about 25% of the way through and still enjoying it. It's gearing up. Like, this is not a small book by any means, and I can already feel the momentum starting to build, and momentum is one of my favorite things about John Gwynne's writing, so can't wait. And then my patron Jen and I are reading Brissinger by Christopher Paolini. This is book 3 in the Aragon series. I know you guys haven't thought about this series in years. Well, no, maybe so, because the new book Murtagh did just come out. Jen and I are in the same boat where we've reread the first 2 books a couple times, really loved those 2 when it very first came out, but then the lag of release between book 2 and 3 was so long that we never got around to continuing the series. And truthfully, when I did my reread about 5 or 6 years ago, it was with the intention to continue. And whereas I had loved the first book the first time around and the second book, the subsequent read, I was so annoyed at a lot of the things that were going on in the first book. The writing, I mean, it was obviously very clunky. And then the second book, I kind of got a little bit bored the second time around. So it killed all momentum I had to continue. But we got a wild hair, we picked this one up, and I'm actually enjoying it. Classic fantasy is my least favorite subgenre right now. I don't have patience for a lot of the same stuff. But something about reading this is channeling my inner child who would have really loved to have continued the series right away. I'm riding that right now, so I'm enjoying it. And I'm glad that I finally got the kick in the pants that I needed to finish out the series, because I have these beautiful hardcovers and I've had them for years and it's just been hanging over my head. Let's talk about all the books I plan to read. Now, a lot of these books you will have seen on my quarter 2 TBR. I'll post that if you want to just go watch that video instead. I totally understand, because I've got a new system now and I'm really consistent, but there is one startlingly new addition to this that I am so excited to read. In fact, I'll start with that one. I got an arc for Mercy of the Gods by James S.A. Corey. It's a new series from the people who brought you The Expanse. And I'm not dropping everything, but I figured out a way to put it into my reading plans as part of this project that I'm running with my patrons, our quarterly challenge. It fits perfectly with my theme. That'll be the first book I pick up for that. So that particular episode will air on my main channel sometime in June, but very excited for that one. Hopefully it's good, but it's James S.A. Corey, and Daniel Abraham is like easily one of my favorite fantasy writers in the first place. And so, like, it's gonna be good. Whatever it is, it's gonna be good. I can't wait. Sonia and I will hopefully be continuing our read with The Black Iron Legacy. Broken God is the final book in the trilogy. I have a lot of high hopes. Foul Days by Genoveva de Mova. I have talked about this book often enough on my channel that I don't have to look at the name now to remember how to pronounce it. Well, maybe not pronounce it, but say it phonetically. This is book 1 in the Witches Compendium of Monsters. It comes out in June. It's part of a duology. Monstrous Nights comes out in October. And it's like a low fantasy involving witches with like Slavic culture, and it's being pitched as The Witcher meets Naomi Novik, and it's got my name written all over it. I cannot wait to start this one. This was very kindly sent to me by Tor. The Sea Watch by Adrian Tchaikovsky, book 6 in the Shadow of the App series. Books with Benghis Khan says I'm really gonna like this one, and I believe him. I love the creativity of this man's world. I love this series in particular, and I'm a sucker for water stuff. And so this promises a lot of world building of the variety I haven't seen in this series yet, and very excited to read. Demon in White by Christopher Racchio, book 3 in the Sun Eater series. I'm very much enjoying my experience with this one. I've even read the short stories between the novels and enjoyed them thoroughly, and plan to continue reading everything in the world. I feel like I love it when I'm invested enough in a story to want to read all of the material to like really enrich my experience. Book 2 was wild. So many different things going on there, very unconventionally told, and it just makes me excited to see where the story is going next. I particularly love the villains. Book 2 expanded on their perspective to a degree that I just think is brilliant. And that kind of writing, so many good things going on that I can't wait to see what happens next. See, I love that. Every single book that I have here, I'm not like, oh man, I just feel obligated to read this. And And you know, I signed up for this one and I probably shouldn't have. No, everything on my list is like top tier priority, and I'm just beside myself. I just can't handle it. And last but not least, my patrons and I are picking up Veiled Throne by Ken Liu, book 3 in the Dandelion Dynasty Quartet. Talk about an unconventional, wild series. This one has been an experience so far, and in a very different way than Sun Eater. Like, I don't know how the author did this, but he managed to take this concept and tell this incredibly broad, complex story where it's like almost a historical accounting of this world, which expands a considerable timeline, and do that without losing the character deep connection aspect of the story. He does both. It's like probably one of the most well-rounded stories I've ever read in that regard, because it manages to do everything, and it does everything incredibly well. And the momentum building, the surprises, the gut punches, so many cool things about this series so far. And I can't wait to see how it ends. There's a reason that BookTube is raving and has raved about a lot of the titles that I'm finally getting around to. There's something really special about a lot of them. And being able to experience it for myself now and kind of articulate what it's done for me, like, this is like the next evolution in SFF writing, and I love it. Take a moment to appreciate that I ombre'd all my books unintentionally. That must be a sign from the book gods that I'm reading what I'm supposed to be reading right now. Thanks for joining me on this one. I want to know what books you're looking forward to picking up in April and what kind of cool stuff you've read lately. I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.